Hi guys, I'm Mike.
And I'm Ash.
And this is F1 Fanatics. Welcome back, and welcome back to Ash. Obviously, in his corona break, we don't live with each other, so making videos has been tough. And obviously, Ash, if you would know watching the channel, has been starting up his new career, so been busy with that. But he's back today for a special video, so Ash, welcome back.
Well, it's good to be back and good to be able to do what I think is going to be quite a fun video, because it's not something we've done on the channel before. We've made hints at what we're going to be saying, but never actually put it out there.
Exactly, and that is, if you haven't seen by the thumbnail already, the fact that we are going to be giving our individual, they may be similar, we haven't spoken about this, so it will be quite amusing if we actually turn out to have exactly the same list. But we are going to be going with our kind of top 5 drivers of all time, and then once we've done that, we are going to pick our driver lineups who we would love to see as a pairing together. And then obviously in the comments down below, we would love to hear your top 5 drivers of all time and what would be your driver matching as well. We've inferred kind of like the guys in the conversation who we think, you know, is really up there. But yeah, I guess we're going to go with our 5. And so, Ash, do you want to go with your 5 first?
I'll go for my 5 first, especially as I think it's one that probably won't be on your list.
Ooh.
Yeah. So the only reason I think it's going to be one that's not on your list is because I'm actually picking a driver that never won a world championship. Crazy, I know.
I think I know the one it might be.
I think it's quite obvious who the one it is when I say that. And my number 5 is going to be Sterling Moss. So for those of you that know, and basically for me to just saying it, he never won a world championship. But if you talk to anyone in the Formula One world, he is the best driver never to have won a championship. And theoretically, he should have won at least one of them. And it was just because of his sportsmanship that he didn't. So yeah, you've got to put him up there, definitely. Class driver, and was a great driver in different types of motorsport as well. It wasn't just Formula One where he was performing at that level.
Absolutely. Sir Sterling Moss was just an absolutely brilliant driver. Obviously, you know, his sad passing recently was, you know, sad to have, but I think he's a worthy addition to the list, and you can certainly make a very good case for him being up there. And I know this is a horrible list for me because I always like to kind of split my modern and old eras, so I kind of get away with kind of putting some people. But my number 5 is going to be Ayrton Senna. Now, obviously a guy that inspired a generation of drivers. He inspired a generation of F1 fans. You know, still today, the fans who mainly watched in that time, the large majority are Ayrton Senna fans, and they just think that he was absolutely brilliant. And if you watch the replays, unfortunately I was not alive. Well, I was 1 year old, unfortunately, when he sadly lost his life in Imola in '94. And, you know, the replays, it's not quite the same, but you still try to kind of really get a taste of what Senna was. And his performances, especially in the rain, are some of the best F1 races that you'll ever see, and definitely worthy, I think, of making the top 5 for me. So, Ash, who's your number 4?
My number 4 is widely regarded as one of the best in history and is always on these lists. So I'll be surprised if he's not on yours. And I'm going to go for the godfather of Formula One at number 4, and that will be Juan Manuel Fangio. So to have 5 world championships in a time where reliability was awful for the cars, really, let's be honest with that one. You never knew if you were going to finish a race. And also, if you did crash in a race, then it was an era where death was quite common. So it's amazing to have been able to get a world championship at that stage, to get 5 of them, and especially at the age as well. It was one of those where, obviously, it's not like it is nowadays back then, where everyone was, 20s to 30s with racing. There was a lot more older drivers, but for me, definitely one of the greatest of all time. So, going to put him at number 4.
I mean, he's both on our list. And I think that was a very fair kind of run through of One Man Fangio. Like those 5 titles in 5 different, no, not 5 different cars, 4 different constructors, wasn't it? But to do that, and the only driver in history to have done that. I mean, I know at that time drivers were a little bit more mercenaries. They certainly were. Yeah, it was still a very special achievement. But number 4 on my list is going to be another driver that we kind of lost before his time. A man who dedicated his entire racing life to Lotus in the Formula 1 terms. A very popular driver and a guy that, when people speak about him, they just speak so highly of him. And that is Jim Clark. Absolutely brilliant driver. He was just, for the time that he drove in, just quicker than anybody else. And some of the stories I remember, I think it was the 1967 Monza Grand Prix, where he suffered a puncture, went all the way to the back, regained the lead after being a lap down, but unfortunately didn't finish the race, running out of fuel come the end of it. There are just so many performances from Jim Clark that you just go, wow. And the way that Jackie Stewart speaks about him as well, just, what a driver Jim Clark was. And it's 2 world titles to his name. He feels like it's one that would have been more had, he been able to live his entire racing career, but certainly worthy name in the top 5 list. But he's coming in at number 4 for me.
Okay, so my number 3, I'm not really a curveball, but I think it's more to do with my thoughts on F1 as a whole and quite a bit of the background around the period that this person was driving. I'm actually going to go for Michael Schumacher at 3.
Oh.
And I know you're probably going to have him a lot higher. I just think it's one of those where the combination of the Ferrari dominance, and also it was a time where Ferrari was starting to flex their political control over F1. So there was a lot of things that you look at Michael Schumacher and think that's not really the way things should have been done, but you can't take away he's an absolute success in the sport. 7 world titles, which is the record. Know that Lewis Hamilton's obviously getting close to that. May match it this year if we get a full season. And the fact that Hamilton is still got records of Schumacher's to match if he wants to be considered the ultimate F1 driver. But for me, I think there's a little bit of a tarnish to some of Schumacher's performances that almost affect the overall view that people have of him. And honestly, I think we're going to have the same thing with Lewis Hamilton. The fact that I don't think people realised what they had with Schumacher as a Formula 1 world champion until it was too late, really. But yeah, I'm going to put him at number 3.
3, he certainly is on my list, and he certainly is higher than position 3. But 3 for me is going to be the man that you mentioned as your number 4, and that is Juan Manuel Fangio. And I think, Ash kind of said it all before on his list. He was a guy, won 5 world titles, and that was a record that lasted until 2004. Well, sorry, no, 2003, wasn't it, when Michael Schumacher beat the record. Just, that's incredible how long that record lasted, and showed how impressive his performances was. He raced in a time where, it was often expected that racing drivers might not walk away from the circuit alive. Just such danger that they went through, and he did all of this in his 40s as well, which I think is even more impressive. The fact that, well, it was more kind of driver skill and the experience of driving the car, where the modern day cars have a lot more in terms of favouring the young guys in terms of speed of reactions with the speed that the cars go at. But yeah, just Fangio, incredible driver.
Well, my number 2, I think this is where people are going to be surprised, basically because of how much I talk about him on the channel, because I don't hide the fact that I'm a fan of this driver. It's going to be Lewis Hamilton, putting him number 2. Now, yes, the numbers when you look at Hamilton's career are incredible. There's very few records in F1 that he's not within touching distance of getting. So it is amazing to think that he's been able to achieve that much. If you take out the first year of Formula One, he's got the joint record for highest finish in a rookie season, winning a championship within second year in Formula One. Yes, he had the advantage that he went into a McLaren that was already near the top. But then again, it's a McLaren that Alonso didn't win a title in. That's one way of looking at it if you want to compare drivers. But he's got the most pole positions, more than likely going to have the most race wins. You know, he's that close to it. Going to be able to get the most podiums, more than likely. I still think he will match Michael Schumacher's record of 7. I'm not convinced he will be able to break the record, only because I feel as if it's one of those where you're going to get to that point and then it's almost, I've achieved pretty much everything in Formula One. He's, because of being able to match the records in terms of race wins and things like that so early in terms of championships. If he was quite a few races away from that, then potentially that drive would continue. But you've also got to look at it that he's second oldest on the grid, isn't he, Lewis Hamilton?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just Kimi Räikkönen. So he is getting towards the end of his career. Admittedly, it's not a career that's going to end dramatically. It's not going to end up straight away. I just think he's got a lot more interest outside of Formula One than a lot of drivers. So I do see him being one where he starts to get records and then it's like, well, I've achieved all of this in Formula One, so I will take that step away. But can't take anything away from him for his rookie year. Was unlucky with, I would say, 3 races definitely in that season. So you could look at it and say there's a season where he should have won a championship. He then had the wilderness period, shall we call it, where McLaren sort of just dropped off in terms of performance and really weren't close to Red Bull. And then also Rosberg's season, 2016. That should have been Hamilton's year as well. So you can look at his career and say missed opportunities, but he has taken so much from it.
And mine top 3 is kind of weird. Obviously, Fangio coming in at number 3 for me. Lewis Hamilton also is number 2 on my list as well. So you can see kind of like a ascending in what they've achieved in the sport in terms of world championships. But Lewis Hamilton for me is just... It's not only the on-track ability, I think he is a master of a time where F1 politics has probably grown. The off-the-track stuff has really kind of been a master of it, and being in the right place at the right time is even more important than what it may have been in the past. And, you know, I look at him against guys like Fernando Alonso and Sebastian Vettel, and you know, Lewis Hamilton, with his ability, has managed to go ahead of those guys, beat them, be in the right place with the right cars, be in the right team, having that guiding hand of Niki Lauda helping him as well. I just think what he's been able to achieve is brilliant. And also, you know, it can't be understated his influence outside of the sport. Being the first ever black F1 driver and achieving all that he has done in the sport is incredible. And, you know, the social sides outside the sport, I think the repercussions of what Lewis Hamilton's in the sport has done in this sport will be felt for years to come. And yeah, like you said, some people may not appreciate what he's truly doing in this sport while he's still in it, but you can't take away what Lewis Hamilton has done. He's been an incredible driver, an incredible asset to F1, and he's not done yet. We'll only see where he kind of ends up at the end of his career, and it's interesting to see how it will all unfold. So who, Ash, gets number one on your list?
So it's one of those where people who have been watching the channel from the beginning are likely to have figured this one out for me. And I think it's the way to go about it is, if you've got a 6-time world champion having this person as an idol, a 7-time world champion who notices the ability of a driver, it's quite clear that the ability that Ayrton Senna had in a Formula One car is, for me, I think he is the greatest F1 driver of all time. Should have had more than the 3 world championships that he got. In all honesty, I reckon probably 2 of Schumacher's championships would have gone had Senna not died in '94. He would have been continuing for a while in the sport, and definitely in the wet, it showed. Like, the ability was so vast that he just was able to take multiple seconds out of drivers over a lap in the wet. And in the dry, he wasn't far off of it either, being able to take large chunks. He also had times where the politics of F1, the late 80s, it was one of those where you don't really want to be saying it, but there was a sense of knowing people did help. And if you watch the film Senna, you get a real perspective of what it was like, the relationship he had with Alain Prost, who, when you look at them as drivers, he hated Senna as a driver. But if you listen to anything that he says about him now, shows how much respect he had for him as well. So, and also when you've got a champion like Alain Prost wanting to put a stipulation in their contract that Ayrton Senna will not be in the car with you, will be your teammate, you know that you've got a good driver on your hands there. And yeah, as Mike said, when he was summing it up, it was an untimely death, and I do think he would have had a couple more championships at least had he not died when he did.
I think Senna tops a lot of people's list, and the top 3 that you've gone for, I think, are often described as in the greatest of all time list. It was just, I don't know, Senna I think is brilliant. I do think his driving ability was incredible, and so he certainly will always be in the top 5 of any list. But yeah, was an immense talent, definitely immense talent that graced the sport. But my number 1 is probably no surprise to people who watch the channel as well, is Michael Schumacher. For me, he was the guy who took F1 really on from that stage in the 80s, like Senna, Prost, Piquet and Mansell in the 80s. they were brilliant. They were absolutely fantastic, but they were still proper racers. They were guys on the track. There was an air of professionalism that Michael Schumacher brought to the sport, and the way that he transformed it, the athlete that he was, is incredible. The fact that he is the record championship holder to this date, obviously with Lewis Hamilton knocking on the door, but just what he achieved at Ferrari. Not many drivers have been able to do what he did at Ferrari, and I know you mentioned in terms of the politics, and Ferrari were able to get on top of it in that kind of fight with McLaren and in the fight with Williams as well. Obviously in the 2003 season, I think the Michelin tyre kind of controversy was a true force of kind of Ferrari's political power. But what Michael Schumacher achieved, in the way that he achieved it and the team that he created, I just think within a team environment, he is the perfect driver who was driven in that. Lewis Hamilton has got it a bit to a stage. He's got there to a close. Senna had it with his relationship with Honda, but just I think Michael was the best in that. The way that he brought the best of his team against other teams, you can obviously question the '94 Adelaide clash with Damon Hill and the 1997 Jerez crash with Jacques Villeneuve. Obviously, kind of points to notably go against Schumacher, but what he achieved, how he kind of turned Ferrari and helped turn Ferrari into that winning machine. They hadn't won a championship since 1979 on a World Drivers' title. I think that shows how difficult it is to win a title with Ferrari, and he won 5 in a row. And that to me is something incredible, and I think what he achieved in the sport is incredible. And for me, it's going to take some beating to someone to come along and be the greatest of all time ahead of him for there. But that's rounding off our top 5 list, Ash. So who out of your top 5 are making it as teammates together?
I want to go for Hamilton and Senna, because I think that would be a great partnership to have, but there would be too many clashes. It wouldn't work. So I am going to stick with the best of British, I think, and I am going to go for Lewis Hamilton with Stirling Moss as my driver lineup.
I think that is a very strong lineup, and I think it would certainly be a harmonious relationship as well. I'm not sure on camera. No, I don't think you can see it, because Thea has just kind of come in, and as usual recently, even more so, the cats have kind of been getting in on these videos and jumping in through there. But yes, my drivers, I'm going to put together my number 1 in Michael Schumacher. I'm going to put him there, and I'm going to put him alongside Jim Clark. I just think they would be very quick, but I don't think there would be any driver rivalry. I don't really see the competitiveness of how it is. How Jim Clark's spoken about as a person, I think he was just devastatingly quick, but he didn't really understand why he was quick. I think he just enjoyed racing. So I don't even think Michael is a master of the mind games and the politics side of things. But I don't think Jim would have kind of really got wrapped up in that. I think he would have just got in the car, driven, and you would have got the best performances through there. And Michael, I just think, is, like I've said, the best team ethos to kind of really drive these guys forward. I think we've both picked pretty good pairings.
You know, I think you'd get some good results there, no matter what team you put them in.
They're not bad drivers, are they? They're pretty good.
Yeah, you know, I think you've got a few more world championships than me, but I don't think that matters. I think my parent would give you a run for their money.
Well, I think that would be exciting. That would be something. In the comments down below, make sure, guys, you kind of answer who you think has the best driver lineup, and also what would your top 5 be? Who makes your top 5 of all-time drivers? We would love to kind of hear that. But if they're new around here or haven't done so already, Ash, what can they do?
You can press the subscribe button. That'll make sure that our videos are going into your YouTube inbox. And if you press the bell icon, you'll actually get a notification when one goes live. And hopefully I'll be in a few more of them now.
Yeah, fingers crossed. We're getting Ash. And maybe, hopefully, you know, hopefully we can get a few more videos actually where we're back on screen together. That would be brilliant. Having it go back to how it used to be before all this kind of you know, Corona break happened and all the carnage that's happened in the world afterwards. But anyway, guys, that's been it. That's it for another one here on F1 Fanatics. So for now, you F1 fans, keep racing.